Hey, welcome to What's Your Cause? I'm your host, Chris Culp, and it's time to talk to some people that are making this world a better place. So let's go. Today, we've got two awesome guests with me today. These two amazing guys are making a real difference in kids' lives here in the Valley. We've got community collaborators Anthony Hall and Dawit Kebede.
Kebede, but hey,
Kebede.
close enough. No
Close
worries.
enough.
Yeah,
I'm not the first guy, all right,
yeah,
that's destroyed the last name.
thousands, but no worries.
All right, and they are representing Arizona Urban Youth Excel. So these two guys are creating a space where young people feel loved, respected, and can learn about Jesus. They're building a community that's just about not just about church, but about helping kids because the best version become the best versions of themselves. So last time I saw these guys, just a quick background. Do we look like maybe there might have been a couple months in between seeing you, and you look like you had been hitting the gym a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take that. Yep,
So I
I've
was
been
like,
doing my push-ups and sit-ups.
yeah, doing push-ups. Yeah, just got some been tearing up a little bit, and then Anthony came in today, clean shaved, hardly even recognized the guy. So, but no, Anthony's one of those guys. First time I met him, I had felt like he was a brother of mine that I hadn't skipped a beat, and I had known forever. So it's always great to have those people in your life and meet those kind of guys. So thanks for being here, guys. So let's dive into it. So do we all start with you? So what inspired you and gets you fired up to focus in on and building these foundations and this foundation of faith and community with young people?
Yeah,
And
yeah. There's probably a million ways to answer a question like that. I think for me, one of the things that motivates me to get up and do the work that we do every day is providing for students things that I wish I had growing
mm,
up. So my parents are immigrants from Ethiopia, and so growing up, I constantly felt pulled between what I had at home, which was a foreign refugee family, and then getting on campuses, and then having friends who, of course, were from the country. So there was this tension that I faced, and I didn't have outlets to process these things. My parents talked about God, but it didn't really resonate because they had their own cultural experiences. So I
okay.
constantly felt pulled in between a bunch of different things. So in high school, I think the pressure got the most extreme for me. I didn't have outlets. I didn't have people that were older than me that I could trust to help me process some of this stuff. And I think one of the things that motivates me is that I want to kind of be that person for a lot of students, a space where they can process these things, where they can kind of have an outlet to share their frustrations and pains, even their hopes, with somebody who's a little older, got a little bit of wisdom to share, but also somebody that cares. So I think providing that kind of individual for students is crucial for me.
Yeah. And what Anthony, what role does like mentorship take in your program? So taking from kind of what we was saying as far as like he didn't have that in his life growing up, and you can apply those principles to your program today. Like, what role does that have for you?
It has an extreme role for me because just as I didn't have it either. From when I came from
Mm,
Chicago, there weren't. I mean, it was a village. You know, everybody in the village helped raise a child. So
sure,
I was getting looking from parents that weren't mine.
and
You
that
know,
still
to
hasn't
make
changed
sure
today.
it
Yeah,
still hasn't changed. But within the mentorship part of it is. I didn't have someone that came alongside me when I was going through struggles or going through times that I can talk to that would be like, hey, let me guide you this way, or let me tell you what I've been through. Let me help you process what I had to process a long time ago. Let me give you some pointers. So,
yeah,
like even with my son, I'm like, hey, I want you to be start not from down low, but I want you to start from up high. So I'm going to give you all that I have, so that when you start, you're starting way above where I. And so that's also mentorship with our kids. Like we're like, hey, let's help you get to this point. Hey, I've already been there. So let's not let you go there.
right.
Let's let you start past that point.
Get you out of the blocks quicker.
Get you out of the blocks. Instead of starting a 100-meter race
Yeah,
at the starting line, you started at 50 yards already down the track.
Mm,
You know?
yeah.
nice.
So, like, when you guys first came on board, what were some of the major challenges that you might have been able to work through, or that you've kind of overcome through some trials and tribulations?
Yeah, so Urban Youth Excel has been in Phoenix for probably about a decade or so. But one of the challenges has been finding a identity. about what we do.
Yeah.
There was always a desire to get students to reach them for Jesus, to share with them about God's love. I think what the identity would be for us as it relates to that mission was something that was in flux for a couple of years. I joined about 3 years ago, and it felt like we were in a kind of revamping, relaunching stage of something that had been here but was dormant to some degree. So I think one of the challenges of rebranding a lot of what we did was getting buy-in with a bunch of students who weren't quite sure of who we were and what we were about. So a lot of the uphill battle was when we would hang out with students, either go to their games, hang out with them during lunch, hang out with them after school. It was being a consistent enough presence that students believed we cared about who they were before we cared about sharing with them some agenda that we had. So that takes time, right? As does all good things. So you may go 6 months of hanging out with students and going to games before they'll even text you back,
Oh, yeah.
let alone give you the phone number. So there's an uphill battle there. But I think one of the things that we've seen as a fruit of that kind of work is now we have multiple students who know us. We've seen students from their freshman year and now graduate, and now some of them are going to college. So it was that initial buy-in that we needed from students. It took a while to build, but by God's grace, now it's been there for a couple of years, and we've seen the fruit of students knowing they don't just want to tell us about Jesus, they want to get to know us at the same time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think one of the most rewarding things with mentorship, I used to coach, and I have kids even up to 2 weeks ago that would text me and be like, "Hey, coach, I need you as a job reference."
Right.
It's like, I haven't talked to this kid in probably like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Right. But like, that's awesome. You can just sit there and
Mhm.
you've built that trust. You've built those bridges between really success and what you guys are wanting to go for. And if they're back to you speaking what you were speaking into them, 6 months ago, a year
Yep.
ago, like that's very rewarding. So that's
Mhm.
awesome. That's awesome. So kind of exploring programs impact and future. Can you share a story of a time that maybe really felt like it made a difference in a kid's life, and how did that impact you personally?
Oh, see, that's awesome. Because there's a ton of stories.
Of course,
Because
yeah.
and what I would like to do is I'm gonna tell a story where it's not just one student, but it was two, three students all in the same place. And
Okay.
they would all come, and where we were we were on a school campus, and we were just visiting, and we just happened to be talking to two students, and the students was like, "Oh, going through stuff." They were crying, and I was like, "Oh, why y'all crying?"
Mhm.
And the thing about it was is that they were like, "Well, I'm going through teenage things,
Yeah.
that that they face all of how society is." And to be able to sit down and we had a conversation and to be able to speak life into them, but also let them leave that conversation feeling valued, feeling appreciated, feeling understood, and having a different outlook even on their own life.
Mm.
That was and so with these young ladies, and I still have times where they're like, they text and they with me and my wife, and they're like, "Hey, I'm going through this," or "I want to tell you, remember when you told me this? Well, this happened, and guess what? I knew that I was valuable, so that didn't bother me." So
That's
it
awesome.
was a great story to be able to see how they're traveling through their life and
Yeah.
taking what we were able to pour into them, and then to sell even when they come against more struggles because they're gonna face and
Oh
we're
yeah.
able to help you through them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, let me respond to that as well. Thank you for sharing. So our mission statement is that we want to partner with Jesus to disciple inner city students where they are. And there's a bunch of components to that, but one of the verses in the Bible that really motivate all that we do comes from Matthew 9 when Jesus is walking through a town. He sees needs everywhere, and it says he has compassion on the people because they're like sheep without a shepherd. So then he says to the disciples, he says, "Hey, pray to the Lord of the harvest because the fruit is right here. The challenge is there's not enough people who are willing to work with the Lord of the harvest to get into the field and do the work." And part of our concern is when we go onto these high school campuses, we're wanting to be like Jesus, and we're asking, where are the students that are like sheep without a shepherd? How can we find students that are struggling, that seem like they're wayward and wandering? And how can we come alongside what God wants to do in their life and partner with them, partner with God in particular with that?
Mm.
So there's one student I'm thinking of last year. He was actually referred to us by a counselor. One of the benefits of being a consistent presence on campuses is that people take account of that and they know when you're serving students well. And so we built a relationship
Build
with a
that
counselor,
trust. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And again, staff and counselors and admin are kind of looking like who's really here for our students or who has some kind of other agenda.
Right.
And because of the work we've put in, we knew one of the counselors, and she brought a student over to us whose mother had just passed and is now living with his sister. And he was really quiet to himself. I got his number. I asked him what had been going on. Later on that week, I ended up getting him off campus so that he could kind of open up and share. And he had been telling me he was struggling with suicide because his mother had cancer. She ended up passing away. He's now living with his sister, who has a whole family, so he kind of feels like he's a burden. He doesn't know where to go. He's dealing with all this grief. He doesn't know if he wants to graduate high school. And so
Real
he was
stuff.
real stuff,
Real
right?
stuff,
At 17 years old, you're still trying to figure out, where to dress and, what to wear when you want to look cool for Instagram or something like that.
Yeah,
And then your mom passes. And so life smacks you in the face really hard. And so I was able to share with him, sit with him consistently for months. We were able to get him with a grief counselor to help him process some of the suicidal thoughts that he was having. And over months of time, we could look back maybe 6 months down the line. He ended up graduating, and this was his senior year when this occurred. And it was through the conversations we had about processing his grief, about wondering where is God in the midst of the fact that my mom had cancer and left me at 17. Did she do something wrong? Right? All those really tough questions.
Yeah.
We were able to process those with him, and I felt like that was an opportunity to kind of embody what Jesus spoke about when he said that the crowds are like sheep without a shepherd, people needing compassion, who are wayward and need somebody to come alongside them.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think that's why in the intro it's just like there's a couple amazing guys that have done amazing things here in the valley because like those conversations that you had with that kid, I mean, that changed the course of his life.
Right.
I mean, he could maybe not be here today, right?
Yeah.
What do you guys feel? Just kind of getting back to building relationships and building that community. What do you think is the most important like relationship there? Is it with the teachers, faculty, or is it with the kids? I feel like there's a balancing game there that you guys are gonna have to have. Is that true?
You want to take that?
Yeah, I take that.
Well, I mean, I
Take it, bounce it off. But I feel that there's multiple connections because there's connections with the teachers, connection with the students, but also connection with their families.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So in order to be able to, because we're trying to influence and motivate and change lives for the kids, but not just them by themselves as individuals, but holistically as their family. Because they were generational. They got younger sisters, younger siblings
Right.
that are also having to face some of these things they're facing. So they need to be able to help carry them through. So to answer your question, it would be the student because they're the middle ground.
Mhm.
They're the ones that, as we pour into them, they then pour into their families, and as we pour into them, they affect the faculty because of the faculty at that time. Now you got counselors where kids are coming and they're actually a little bit mentally stronger. They're a little bit more secure. So when they come in, now we're teaming with that counselor and that teacher. So when they're in class, they're not maybe acting up
Yeah.
that you would call it
Right.
as much because now that student has some level of foundation.
Well, you've
Some
changed their mindset, right?
yes,
At that point.
yes,
So do you
yes.
feel like when you guys are approaching a student, how does that conversation usually go with like his parents or parent or just at home? Like
Well, I mean, as you can
do you
imagine,
get
there's
involved real quick with that, or do you let them go kind of
yeah.
relay the message, or
It could look a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Everybody has different backgrounds, of course, because our concern is to get kids to Jesus. That also adds another layer of potential either approval or significant, maybe reluctance. Like, yo, what are you kind of telling my kid? We've
Yeah.
had kids who come around, they hang out, they're like, oh, dang, this Jesus thing is real. Like, I want to really lean into this. And some families are like, I don't like what my child is doing. Maybe they don't like the way that they're leaning into some of the religious commitments or getting closer to Jesus stuff. Other students may be more into it. I've found that the best testimony to what we do to families is students who lean more into the things their families want them to be successful in. So when we can encourage students to take school a little bit more seriously, when we can encourage students to take not getting in trouble a little bit more seriously, when we can encourage students to um, hang out on campus and maybe avoid bad friendships and relationships a little more seriously, that to me is the greatest symbol to the parents that what we're doing is worth it.
Absolutely.
When we have them just share, hey, come meet my one of my a volunteer we meet on campus. It's always so and so. But when the students actually take a liking to their own success, that's the best, I think, testimony to what we do for families.
Yeah, that's cool.
And also, when their families come and they see their kids doing sports or doing these activities that they didn't do before,
Right.
that they're now doing positive stuff,
What is
and all of a
going
sudden
on?
they're saying like, "What's
Right,
happening?"
right,
They're like,
right, right.
"Why are y'all always at these things? Why are y'all
Exactly.
always here? Oh, you're that. Oh, Anthony, you're Dawit. Oh, thank you so much for getting our kid
Yeah.
here."
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how do you guys see the program kind of evolving, and maybe some of the initiatives and programs that you guys are considering maybe over the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years,
that's good.
whatever that might look like?
I think the best thing we can do for students is to get them away from their phones and out of the city. Uh,
Amen.
yeah, right. I don't want to be like the old guys, like, you guys always on your phones or something. But yeah, you're all right. I mean, so are we, right? I think it's like inevitable to some degree for all of us. We're kind of enslaved to our phones. But one of the things that I love that we do, and that we want to develop more opportunities for this, is to get students even to day trips. This is something we're looking into. Is we may take them early Saturday morning, 5, 6 a.m. Take them up to Pasadena, take them up to the Grand Canyon, take them up to Williams, to get them away for a day where we'll eat, we'll hang out with you the whole day, probably do an activity, spend some time reading the word and praying, and trying to do our best to get our kids to detach just for a moment, because we really believe that God speaks clearer to students when they can get away from the things that distract them. So one of our hopes is that when we can get them away, they can be a little bit less distracted, and that can provide a better environment for them to hear from God, for them to hear from one another, for them to hear from us. So I think that's something we're going to lean in big time into this year, is how can we get students away to detach for just a moment, so that they can hear more clearly from God and from their friends.
That's cool.
And with that, it helps create an environment where they get to go and they have people surrounding them that are in the same like-minded or same desire, same passion. So now instead of having that peer pressure is positive. They're like, "Ooh,
Right.
hey, let's have this conversation. Ooh, I can bring my walls down because everybody else is bringing their walls down. I feel safe with UYE and with they're bringing us up here, and so now we can truly meet those needs, not just the surface, but meet the needs that are underneath those surface needs."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it helps.
That's cool. It's like as far as partners and whatnot, are there any great groups out there that you guys work with on a regular basis that really amplify, throw a little fuel on your fire, help
Yeah.
amplify your guys' message?
I could think of two, and Anthony, if you have any. One is Young Life. It's been an organization that we've partnered with for a long time. They're a national and even globally nonprofit that works to get students to Jesus, and they have their method that they do it with, which we love. So they're an organization with that we partner with often, and we think they do great work. One other organization is called the AZ Reach. It's led by a gentleman who used to work at Cesar Chavez High School, one of the high schools out here, named Juan Chavez, and he really tries to find constructive ways to mentor at-risk youth on local high school campuses. And we've partnered with him to kind of provide another angle to serve the needs of those at-risk students at Cesar Chavez and at different schools in the Valley. And there are some other local churches we partner with. Just to mention one is Beloved Community Alhambra is a church that we host a bunch of events at. I attend there. So those would be three. I'd say Young Life, AZ Reach, and then my local church, which has partnered well with us, Beloved Community Alhambra.
Cool.
And we have a few other, just as we said, we have local churches because that's building a foundation. Being able to get the kids into a church, into a home church where they have another area that has
Right.
support
Yeah.
and leads them to Christ as how we want it to be. And so, like the church that I attend, CCV, we have a cohort of kids that we take even from the middle schools, and then we get to the church, and they get to be involved there. There's camps there. I feel that with our partners, it's we meet the needs where the kids are. There are some kids that Young Life is perfect, ideal for them.
Mhm.
And then there's some where Young Life wouldn't actually truly be the place that they need to go. They need to go to like a Beloved Community or CCB where they're like, okay, now we're a little bit more, and also with our discipleship that we're trying to put on as well. So I feel that with our partners and AZ Reach,
Mhm.
CCV, a Redemption or Beloved Community, Young Life, AZ Reach. All those things meet the needs where the kids are at, and that's where our partnerships are so vital to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. I mean, there has to be a ton of parallels between what you guys are trying to kind of bring on campus compared to what they're doing on church campuses.
Right.
So yeah, I would think that would be a partnership to
Mhm.
try to reach out to as many as you possibly can reach.
Yeah.
And they would be pretty fired up about what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's at. You have the community. Um, so if you guys could just share with us real quick, we're just about wrapping up, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, where can our listeners get involved? How can they support your program? Um, any questions and the audience might have for you guys that you might want to answer now?
Yeah.
Just provide a
I'll,
brief
I'll, I'll share
introduction.
one. If I could give one piece of information for folks to wrestle with, is that most of the data that we have now tells us that the reason why students struggle to succeed in school is actually not because of what happened in the classroom. It's about the things that they face outside the classroom that hinder them from succeeding inside the classroom. So part of our concern is to ask, how can we meet the needs that students have outside the classroom? And we know the primary things all the students need is to walk with Jesus. So that would be my concluding appeal to a lot of the folks who are listening is students struggle because of stuff that happens outside the classroom. So where you can read us, if you put AZ Reach into Google, I'm sorry, not AZ Reach, Urban Youth Excel. AZ Reach, we love them. Shout out to AZ Reach. Put in Urban Youth Excel, Arizona Urban Youth Excel, right into a Google search or any search bar. It'll be the first website that pops up. If you look on there, there's a profile of me and Anthony. There's multiple blogs where you can see firsthand the pictures and the work that we do during the school year, during the summer, and our contact information is on there as well. So if there's any interest or any concerns or any students that you may know on some high school campuses that could use some help, yeah, contact us. We'd love to have a conversation and see what we can do to meet their needs.
And quickly, I would just say, also with this, it's sharing it. If you're seeing this listening to this podcast, if you're any of those things, if you're able to share it with your friends. Let people know, because the more the people that know, the more people be wanting to know more about us, which then will allow them to reach out to us, and then we can then share these stories. We can share how we can take over the valley and reach all these kids.
Yeah.
And so I just and that's something that I would like to put out there. Share, let people know. Word of mouth is the greatest way to get things out there, and have that open mind to knowing that we need to get these kids to Jesus.
Yeah.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, hey, both of you guys, I really appreciate your time today. I mean, you guys have done fantastic work, obviously, so changing lives. They're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you as well. So it was fun, gentlemen. Um, well, inspiring stories and people, that's what nonprofits are all about. So keep supporting the causes you believe in. You can start with Urban Youth Excel. Look these guys up. They're the real. So we'll be back soon with more nonprofit goodness because we care.